This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under 18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 572 for April 28th, 2019. Coming up on today's show, when your partner's jealousy precludes your poly. That's coming up on today's show. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Minx, and with me in the co-host chair today is lustyguy.
Happy and lucky to be here as always. Hey, everybody. How's it going today?
And we are back to dealing with a listener question today. We've got some fun interviews lined up that you'll be hearing over the next couple of weeks. But for today, we're going to be a little old-fashioned and deal with a good old-fashioned listener question.
With a kitty on my lap, I might add.
Always better with a cat.
So if you hear, screams and scratches and yowls, it's because said cat moved too quickly.
But first, someone sent me a link to this very short article on a blog simply entitled Science Blog. So obviously it's science-y, right?
It must be science. It says so.
But it was a fun little headline and a fun little, not really an article, it was almost just a blurb. But the title is, Study Could Explain Why People Choose to Have Multiple Relationships at the Same Time.
Which is completely off base, by the way.
So there was a research study at York University's Faculty of Health, and this study found that there could be unique benefits to diversifying needs across partners when in a polyamorous relationship. Experiencing more eroticism and nurturance with one partner was associated with satisfaction and closeness in a concurrent relationship, to which I said a big, well, duh.
Yeah, this is the sound of my eyes rolling. Don't get me started. I have nothing positive to say. I'll be quiet.
Well,
can you hear my eyes rolling?
I can hear your eyes rolling.
Okay.
I can't. I just included this because it was a fun little piece, and I thought it was a fun little duh moment. Basically, it says the study found that participants in poly relationship experience less eroticism but more nurturance in their relationships with their primary partner compared to their secondary partner. And I'm like, what?
There's so much to unpack in
like,
that.
What? How much is eroticism? How much is nurture? How do you rate those? Is it self-reported? But anyway, I only bring it out because it was a fun little headline and a fun little blurb.
It is, and you get to enjoy the sound of my eyes rolling.
Yes. You get to get fully into curmudgeon status. Boom.
I'm trying not to.
You're failing.
Eyes rolling. Is my eyes rolling?
Today's topic, which I have entitled, When Your Partner's Jealousy Precludes Your Polyamory, is from a listener, Debby. It was kind of long, so I'm going to give as quick of a summary as I can. She and her husband, both in their 50s, 4 years into her second marriage, and before attempting poly, they read books, attended poly events, and about a year and a half into the relationship, they actually reached out and tried polyamory. Challenge was, husband was really jealous. Even though he always liked having sex with others, but without relationships. She met someone last year, got the whole thunderbolt, new relationship energy, and her husband was, in her words, a wreck. She continued to try to date, and they went to therapy and tried to work through things for 8 months, and it didn't work. Her boyfriend was in a 15-year poly marriage, so he was experienced. The way she frames it is it really was that her husband simply couldn't deal with his jealousy. She writes, So I ended that relationship with my boyfriend when he said he didn't even want to try to interact with my husband anymore. That was the only issue he and I ever had, but I knew I couldn't work on my marriage while I was with somebody who thought so badly of my husband. It turned out that polyamory worked fine for my husband. He can love many, but he couldn't tolerate my being poly. So polyamory didn't work for the marriage. I stopped dating anyone. He's still seeing other people because I'm not jealous, and he's happier and just better all around when he dates. He's upset with himself that he can't reciprocate. So, she writes, I wonder if you have any words of wisdom for people who decide that polyamory doesn't work for them. Someone like me. I was so happy with both the men in my life. They brought out different sides of my personality, and I felt like I was living life in full color. Remember that movie Pleasantville? Now I feel like I'm returning to a black and white world. I've lost everything that being polyamorous gave me. So I had a good marriage, then I had a marriage and 50% more, and now I'm back to just having the marriage. It feels too small. I don't want to end my marriage. I understand my husband has his limitations, but I can't get over the sadness. Sometimes I get angry that my husband can't be something that he isn't. I've lost a lot by closing up. So I picked a nice easy one for us.
Oh yeah, right down the middle of the plate.
You know, the first thing I thought of when I read this message was I've had musical lyrics in my head all week. I don't know why. I've had lyrics from like Fiddler on the Roof and Les Mis and even Breakfast at Tiffany's in my head all week. I don't know why. But this message made me think of a line from Into the Woods, Sondheim. It's from the song Moments in the Woods. She sings, remembering that you had an and when you're back to or makes the or mean more than it did before. Which is a beautiful lyrics. It's Sondheim, right? Which is really lovely, but that only really applies if you're happy with the or. And it doesn't sound to me like you were happy with the or. The way that you describe the way you feel about your life right now is heartbreaking. Because, well, let's break this down. A couple of things. First of all, poly did work for you, and your polyamory worked for your husband. He's fine with it as long as you don't practice it. His polyamory worked for him. It's just that your being poly didn't work for him. So you guys together are somehow non-monogamous. It's just that you don't get to practice it.
Well, I'm even going to question that. Part of being poly is allowing your partners to be true to themselves.
Yeah.
If your husband is not able to allow you to be true to yourself, poly isn't working for him either, if you want to phrase it that way. He's not fine with poly if he's not happy when you're seeing other people. But really, I think I get a lot of confusion out of this letter. This is one of the things where I think the full text is really informative, and I know we can't read the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe post it up in the show notes so that people can take a look at it. But our letter writer, I think, is confusing the relationship labels with the behavior that's producing the problems. The point is not that polyamory did or didn't work. I would argue, first of all, from my perspective, polyamory didn't work for either of you, for the reason I just stated from your husband's position. But I would also argue that if you're in a relationship where somebody is having sex consensually with other people, even if you are choosing not to have sex with other people, you're polyamorous. You're being exposed to all of the same risks, both biological and emotional and scheduling and time, as if you were seeing other people via your partner that is. You have to deal with jealousy to the same extent. This notion that one is only polyamorous if one is actively at that time seeing multiple people, I think is no more correct than is the idea that you're only bisexual if you are at that time seeing people of multiple genders, multiple people of different, however you want to phrase that. I hope you know what I meant. I'm trying to be inclusive here.
Yeah.
The point is you can be polyamorous whether or not your relationship is working out for you. The other thing that I really want to say, my first reaction is, man, does my heart go out to the letter.
Oh, yeah.
What an awful, painful, terrible situation. And I'm really sorry that you're having to go through this. So I just want to put that out.
Yeah. It's just a horrible situation.
It really is. But now I'll go back to pointing out your confusion and questioning things. Wait.
One thing I wanted to point out was, I just have to jump in here and say, people get to decide on their own labels. Like, we can look at her and say that she is poly or in a non-monogamous relationship, but she gets to decide if she wants to label herself poly or if she wants to label herself as in a non-monogamous relationship with, whatever. But, we're not telling you that you are or aren't poly. You get to decide that for yourself.
That is absolutely true. And the fluidity of the application of that label illustrates my underlying point, which is that the label is not the problem here right now. The label is not the issue. What the issue is the behaviors. Now, you haven't been specific about your husband's behaviors, so I don't know what it means that he couldn't handle it. I don't know what it means that he felt a lot of jealousy. But I think you're also a little confused and you're taking a lot of responsibility for his feelings. Because he's jealous doesn't mean that you have to stop seeing anybody.
I feel like we need a chorus of angels to jump in and start singing right now. It's something that we say, right? His jealousy belongs to him. Now, you can certainly choose to take that action if you like, but it doesn't really sound like you like.
That's right. And in fact, while we're making our literary or musical allusions, the one that I thought of course, here is Flowers for Algernon.
Okay, I'm not seeing the connection, really?
Absolutely. She had a life-altering experience. She was so happily polyamorous.
Yeah.
She was seeing multiple things. She felt like she was more fully herself. And now she feels darker. She feels like it's half a life. So if you know the story of Flowers for Algernon, it is the story of somebody who goes from being a low-intelligence person to a high-intelligence person because of a scientific experiment. And then the experiment's effects taper off and they go back. And the whole question is, given the choice, would you choose to be smarter, faster, better, stronger, something, richer, for a short time, knowing that it was going to go away? Right? And that's where you're at. You had this thing that made you feel a better version of yourself and it's gone away now. Well, I don't know if Algernon would have chose to have it go away. And I'm not sure you should either. I think you owe yourself enough first consideration to say to yourself, I deserve a full life.
One of the things that you say, and this is where I really wish we could have more of a call-in line where we can actually, get more information from the caller, is you say that your husband tried everything to deal with his jealousy and simply couldn't. Now, we have, of course, our advice that we give on dealing with jealousy. And, I don't know in this instance if that would be helpful or not. But what I'm really curious about is one of the things we say to do is to delve down, understand the cause of the jealousy. Like, what was he actually afraid of? You said that he was jealous and he couldn't control it. But to me, it sounded like he experienced feelings of jealousy and then tried to, ignore them or tamp them down. And then they didn't go away, which of course they don't. Like, do we know, is it fear of abandonment? Is it afraid of being replaced? Is it afraid that he's not going to be good in bed? There are all sorts of things that could be at the root of that. And once you know that, then you can start to address those. Then we can get back into the behaviors that you were talking about earlier. Like, there are things that you and he can do to help with that. And maybe you did do all those things and just that falls under tried everything. I don't know.
Well, I think you can deal with the behaviors without dealing with the underlying emotions. For example, if one of the ways that his jealousy is expressed is that he would say to you, you must be home by 11, you can say to him, you don't get to tell me that. And in a moment of calmness, when you are not having a date planned, when his fully best self is engaged, he can make the agreement and say, you know what, you're right. I don't get to tell you that. I'm not going to try to behave that way. Why do I feel the need? Doesn't matter. I'll deal with that. I'll go talk to somebody. I'll go whatever. But I can agree from a behavioral perspective, I don't get to tell you that, and I won't. So I think, again, that's why you need to deal down to the behavioral level with him. Let me take apart something else now. You're the expert on you guys, and you may be completely right about this. But I feel like you need to be able to say to your husband, there must be a middle ground between me being forced to live half a life and a divorce. And if your husband has goodwill and wants to be with you, he is going to say, I'm going to presume he, in this case, is going to say, you know what, you're right. I don't want to make you live half a life. I don't want a divorce. So part of working on jealousy is perseverance. It's practice. When you two stopped creating situations where he could practice, you stopped working together with him on jealousy. One of the best things that you can do right now is give him a chance to practice his jealousy skills. Not hide from them, not pretend like he doesn't have to, not never be confronted with them, but in fact, in a loving, respectful, positive, supportive environment where he knows you're not going to leave him, where he knows you love him, where he knows you're here to work with him, that means you're going to give him a chance to be a better him. Because he wants to too, right? He doesn't like this being jealous. I mean, we're all jealous. What he doesn't like is being out of control, I'm going to guess, and feeling like he can't live with it, and that he has no tools to deal with it. So, you're doing him no favors here. Find a middle ground somewhere between I have to live half a life and I must get divorced, and engage your husband to find that middle ground. It has to be there.
I like that idea of perceiving this as you're continuing to date the person that you love and that you're very happy with and that makes you feel like you're living a life and a half, is giving him the opportunity to deal with his jealousy and improve upon that. I think one of the things that really bothers me about this letter is that I feel like she is taking responsibility for his emotions.
Oh, yeah.
And, those are his job. Those are within him. She has her own emotions to deal with. And I'm sure you have your faults and flaws too, right? But his jealousy is his to deal with, overcome, manage, understand, express, and all of those things that we talk about. It's not your job to take action to try and deal with his jealousy. It's his, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you are more than welcome to be supportive. And like I say, by taking away opportunities to practice, you're not being supportive.
Because this is going to come up in other ways, right?
Well, who knows? The tangle which is his psyche is completely beyond me. But I will say this. If you feel like you're living half a life right now, and he doesn't feel like he's being the best him he can be, I doubt you guys are in a sustainable position.
Yeah, this doesn't sound healthy.
It doesn't
sound like either one of you is going to be very happy with the way these things are working out.
Right. So I would encourage you to sit down with your husband and say, hey, here's the situation. I'm not happy. You're not being your best you. Wouldn't you be happier? Wouldn't you be a better you if you knew you were helping me fill a full life? Well, now let's work on together making changes in behavior incrementally so that we're going that direction, and keep working on it. Some problems take years of dedicated goodwill.
Yeah, this was only 8 months. I mean, I know it sounds like 8 painful months, but that was only 8 months.
But throughout all of that struggle, your lodestone should be your integrity and being true to yourself. I really want to stress to you, you have every right to feel like you're living a full life every day you have. We only have so many of them after all.
Our feedback this week is on episode 565, and this is from Katie, who said, I'm a big fan of the podcast and generally a fan of your advice about looking at your own life or needs and then figuring out what you can or want to offer to other people in your life, especially potential partners. The moment that kind of hooked me in this episode 565 was the tone that implied that anyone can just look at their calendar in a week or 2 sections and choose 1 evening for partner A, 1 for partner B, 1 for just me, and 4 evenings with spontaneous planning the day before or sooner. That sounds like a vacation to me. For those of us with children who are still at home, especially divorced or single parents, the schedule doesn't look like that. Most child placement schedules are organized in 2-week rotations, especially if the divorcing parents each are on 50-50 schedules with kids. Sure, there's scenarios where your kidless week you could plan just like you described, but lots of people have schedules that are more complicated than that. I had a 2-2-5-5 schedule for a couple of years, Monday, Tuesday at one house, Wednesday, Thursday at the other house, alternating Friday, Saturday, Sunday. These days, my schedule's really hard. I only have 4 kid-free evenings every 2 weeks, but my partner's polycule and dating life is really necessary for my sanity. One of the relationships is sufficiently established that I'm totally comfortable having them over to hang out with the kids. But I don't think either of us is entirely comfortable with sexy time under those circumstances. The other two are newer. The best I can hope for is one-on-one time with each partner once or twice a month. I drew out a sample month. There is no damn time to see anyone as much as I would like, and self-care involves getting up at 5 a.m. because no one is crying or yelling yet. Although I think this operates differently for single parents and people parenting with nesting partners, I think that gap is smaller than the one between parents and people who can chill out and those of us whose small people depend on us.
Damn right. Oh my God.
Yeah,
yes.
You're right.
Yeah. Called out. Yeah, that's a little bit of privilege showing there. Kid have left the house a couple years ago now.
Yep.
It's been decades since I had an infant around. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And we sometimes give sample schedules making assumptions, and that's really not fair. It's true. I mean, yes, you're right. Oops, sorry.
Thank you. Well said.
It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by Fubbly Polyamorists everywhere. And this episode's Happy Poly Moment is from Heather, who said, "One of my partner's besties said to her about me today, 'Can't you two just be together forever? She's so perfect for you.' I was and still am already happily married when I met my partner, and I am her first poly relationship. The friend is monogamous, and while she and her wife have always been nothing but warm and inviting towards me from the get-go, they've had a hard time understanding poly. And yet, she's never made me feel weird or different because I'm married or poly. She and her wife ask about my spouse and always make me feel like they're happy that I make their friend happy. It's so awesome to be supported and appreciated this way. I love when people are open-minded enough to be able to love and support their loved ones, even if they don't necessarily share the same preferences or choices. The world would be such a better place if everyone were as empathetic and kind as these two are about all the myriad different human experiences, relationship choices, and beyond."
Wow.
Amen.
That's pretty cool.
We get some hallelujahs and amen in this episode.
I'm feeling positively spiritual.
And mea culpa.
Man, no kidding.
We're going religious on this one.
I guess so. Forgive us, we have sinned.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for today's show. Thanks to everybody who wrote in. And thanks to our polyweekly playmates for your donations this month. We are a free resource. We've helped hundreds of thousands of people navigate their introduction to and continued success with polyamory. Your donations help keep the podcast free for everybody inside and outside the community. If you have questions, comments, or feedback, call 802-505-POLY or email polyweekly@gmail.com. If you have anything that requires paperwork, booking us to speak at an event, survey, promos, anything like that, email lustyguy@polyweekly.com and he'll actually answer you relatively promptly.
With luck.
Yeah. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/polyweekly, at polyweekly on Twitter, elsewhere on the internet. Tagline time. Thanks for listening. And remember,
it's not all about the sex. We nailed that shit. Boom.
Bang.